Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you died? No, don't look at me like that. I'm being serious. Because if I told you that most of the atoms in your body right now weren't there a year ago, you'd have to admit that the you from last year is gone, physically gone. And yet you're sitting there, convinced that you're the same person. So, which is it? Are you alive or are you the ghost of someone who's already gone? By the end of this conversation, I want you to see something that most people never even consider. I want you to understand what physics really says about dying. And I think you'll find that it says something quite surprising. Not comforting in the way a pastor would comfort you, but surprising in the way only the truth can be. Let's start with something simple. Let's start with a candle. You light a candle. The flame flickers, it burns for an hour, 2 hours, and then goes out. Now I ask you, where did the candle go? You might say, well, it melted. But that's not really an answer, is it? The wax pretty much disappeared. The wick became a small piece of charcoal. Something happened to all that matter. Where is it? This is where it gets beautiful. The wax was made of long chains of carbon and hydrogen atoms. When the flame burned, those atoms didn't disappear. That would be impossible. They combined with the oxygen in the air and floated away in the form of carbon dioxide and water vapor. Every atom from that candle still exists out there now, circulating through the environment or drifting out the window, mixing with the atmosphere. The candle is gone, yes, but none of its atoms was destroyed. Not a single one. This is the first law of thermodynamics, and it represents one of the most fundamental facts in all of physics. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It changes form. It moves from one place to another. But the total amount always remains exactly the same. Now you might say, okay, Feynman, that's an interesting trick with a candle. But what about me? And a person? And this is where everything gets truly fascinating. You are made of atoms. About 7 octillion of them, more or less. That's 7 followed by 27 zeros. A number so colossal that if you tried to count them one per second, it would take longer than the age of the entire universe. And these atoms, each of them, already existed here long before you were born. And each of them will continue to exist long after you are gone. Let me put it another way. The carbon atoms in your muscles were once inside a star. Not poetically, not metaphorically. Literally. The carbon in your body was forged in the nuclear furnace of a star that lived and died billions of years before the Earth was even formed. Here's how it works. In the primordial universe, right after the Big Bang, there was almost nothing except hydrogen and a little bit of helium. That's it. No carbon, no oxygen, no iron, no calcium, none of the elements that make you up. So, where did they come from? They came from the stars. When a star like our sun burns, it is fusing hydrogen nuclei to produce helium. That's fusion. But in larger, more massive stars, the process goes further. Helium nuclei fuse to create carbon. Carbon and helium fuse to create oxygen. And the process continues, passing through neon, through silicon, all the way to iron. Layer upon layer like an onion of elements, each one cooked in a furnace hotter than the previous one. And then when the star can no longer burn, when the fuel runs out and the core collapses, everything explodes. A supernova. And in that explosion, all those elements, carbon, oxygen, iron, are thrown into space. They drift through the galaxy for millions of years, mixed with clouds of gas, and eventually are pulled by gravity to form new stars, new planets. And on at least one of those planets, new people. Therefore, there is a very real sense in which you are made of stardust. Every atom of calcium in your bones was forged in a dying star. The same is true of the iron in your blood. The oxygen you're breathing right now was synthesized in a stellar core. and spread throughout the cosmos in an explosion so violent that it briefly outshone an entire galaxy. Now wait, let's be more careful. Let's think about this more calmly, because something even stranger is happening. These atoms that make up your body right now aren't standing still. They're passing through you. There's a beautiful experiment, and I love this one. Scientists tagged phosphorus atoms with a radioactive tracer and tracked them through the bodies of rats. What they discovered was surprising. The phosphorus in a rat's brain, and also in mine and yours, isn't the same phosphorus from 2 weeks ago. In just 14 days, half of it was replaced by new phosphorus atoms coming from the rat's food. And this doesn't apply only to phosphorus, it applies to everything. The atoms in your brain, in your muscles, in your skin, and in your bones are constantly being removed and replaced. You eat a potato, the atoms from that potato are broken down, carried by your blood, and incorporated into your tissues. The old atoms are carried away, exhaled as carbon dioxide, eliminated, evaporated through sweat, returned to the world. What this means is breathtaking. If you think carefully, the atoms that are in your brain right now, the ones that are thinking, the ones that are processing these words are not the same as a year ago. They are literally last week's potatoes. And yet, you remember what happened a year ago? You remember your childhood. You recall your own name. So what is this mind? What are these atoms with consciousness? I'll tell you what they are. They're a pattern, a dance. The atoms enter your brain, perform a dance, and then leave. They're always new atoms, but always performing the same choreography, remembering what yesterday's step was. That's what you are. Not a collection of things, but a pattern, a configuration, a form by which matter has temporarily and beautifully organized itself into something that can look at the stars and marvel. I want to pause here and explain this in the simplest way possible, because this is the central idea. Imagine a wave in the ocean. You see it approaching the shore. You might think, there goes that water moving through the sea. But that's not what's happening at all. The water isn't traveling. Each tiny bit of water just moves up and down in place. What moves is the shape, the pattern. The wave is not a thing. It's behavior that matters exhibiting. You are like that wave. Atoms are like water. They come, circulate, and go away. But the pattern, the shape of you, the way you speak, the way you think, the way you laugh, that remains over time. Now let me get to the misconception, the big one, the one that most people carry without even realizing it. Most people believe that when you die, something is destroyed. They think that the matter, the energy, the substance you're made of simply disappears. Poof, it's over. And that's completely mistaken. Nothing is destroyed. Absolutely nothing. Not a single atom, not a single calorie of energy. When a person dies, the atoms that made up their body return to the earth. They are absorbed by grass, by trees, by worms, by bacteria. They enter the soil, dissolve in water, float into the air. And these atoms keep becoming parts of other living beings, other structures, other patterns. The same thing happens with energy. All the chemical energy stored in your muscles, in your fat, in your tissues is released. It turns into heat. It fuels decomposition. It feeds other organisms. It enters the great energy cycle that has existed since the beginning of the universe. From the point of view of physics, death is not destruction, it's rearrangement. It's the end of a pattern and the dispersion of the components to form new patterns. That's all it is. Now, some of you might say, all right, Feynman, very clever, but the pattern is the part that matters to me. I'm not interested in my atoms surviving. I want to survive. And I understand that. I really do understand. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that physics takes away the pain of death. It doesn't. The loss of pattern, the loss of a person, that's real. It's as real as anything in the universe. But I want you to keep two ideas in mind at the same time. The first is that the pattern, the person, is temporary. It appears, dances, and dissolves. This is true of all complex structures in the universe, from stars to snowflakes, from civilizations to conversations. The second idea is that the components are not temporary. Atoms are older than the mountains, older than the Earth, predating our solar system. They were forged in stars that exploded before our solar system was even a cloud of dust. And after you are gone, these atoms will continue on. They will become part of the soil, the rain, the air, and eventually of other living beings. Maybe of other beings who will sit and question their own existence, just like you are doing now. Let me try a thought experiment. Let's follow a single carbon atom. This atom was created inside a massive star, let's say, 10 times the mass of our sun, about 5 billion years ago. The star exploded. The atom drifted through space, was captured by the cloud of gas and dust, which eventually collapsed to form our solar system. It arrived on Earth, buried in limestone for a few 100 million years. Then a volcanic eruption released it as carbon dioxide. A plant absorbed it during photosynthesis. A rabbit ate the plant. The rabbit died and decomposed, releasing the atom back into the soil. The tree absorbed it. The tree was cut down and burned. The atom returned to the atmosphere. Another plant captured it. A cow ate that plant. You ate the cow. And now that carbon atom is in a cell of your left hand. When you die, that atom will leave your body, go into the soil, and be absorbed by a blade of grass. A sheep will eat the grass. A child will drink the milk from that sheep. And the atom that was once in a star, in limestone, in a rabbit, in you, will become part of a child who will have no idea where it came from. That atom has already performed this dance 10,000 times. It doesn't know and it doesn't care, but it keeps moving forward. Now here's the part that gives me genuine chills when I think about it. The first law of thermodynamics tells us that energy is conserved. It cannot be created or destroyed. And there's a related fact about matter, courtesy of nuclear physics and the understanding we've developed in this century. Under normal conditions, atoms are also neither created nor destroyed. They are reorganized. The number of carbon atoms on Earth has remained approximately the same for billions of years. They simply keep circulating through rocks, air, water, and living beings. Therefore, in a deeply literal sense, nothing that makes you up will ever be lost. It will change form. It will be rearranged. It will become something else, but it will not cease to exist. I need to mention something about the second law of thermodynamics, because people sometimes get confused about that. The second law says that the entropy of a closed system tends to increase. In simple terms, this means that things tend to go from order to disorder. A sandcastle falls apart. Hot coffee cools down. A living body decomposes. This is real and it's relevant. The second law is the reason why complex patterns like you and me don't last forever. It takes energy to maintain the pattern, to keep the dance going, to resist the natural tendency toward disorder. When you die, that resistance stops and entropy wins. The pattern dissolves. But notice what the second law does not say. It doesn't say that matter or energy is destroyed. It says that organization is lost. The matter is still there, just redistributed in a less ordered arrangement. The atoms of a decomposed body are still atoms. The energy from a fire that has gone out is still energy. It's just more dispersed, diluted, harder to harness for something useful. And there's one more thing I want you to consider because I think it's the most astonishing fact in all of science. The universe is about 14 billion years old, give or take. For most of that time, there was no one to observe it. No eyes, no brains, no thoughts. Just hydrogen and helium collapsing into stars, exploding, creating heavier atoms, collapsing again. For billions and billions of years, the universe was just matter doing what matter does. Blindly, without direction, each atom minding its own business. And then somewhere on a small rocky planet orbiting an ordinary star in an ordinary galaxy, Some of those atoms organize themselves into a pattern, capable of thinking, of wondering, of looking up at the night sky and asking, what is all this? Why is there something instead of nothing? You are the universe contemplating itself. You are atoms that have arranged themselves in such a complex, such an extraordinary configuration, that the configuration is able to reflect on its own existence. This had never happened in 14 billion years of cosmic history. As far as we know, except here, except now, except in things like you and me. And yes, the pattern is temporary. It will end. The dance will stop. But the fact that it happened, that atoms could organize themselves into something that feels joy and wonder and grief and love, that isn't diminished by being temporary. If anything, it makes it even more extraordinary. I have no patience for the idea that knowing science takes away the beauty of a flower, or the mystery of life, or the meaning of death. It does the opposite. When you understand that every atom in your body was cooked inside a star, that your consciousness is a pattern, sustained by electrochemical signals in a cluster of matter that was once scattered throughout an entire galaxy, and that every part of you will return to the earth and the sky and the ocean, to integrate with other things, other patterns, other dances. How could that be anything but magnificent? We are not separate from the universe. We are the universe temporarily organized, briefly conscious. And when the organization ends, the components return to the reservoir from which the next pattern will be formed. So, is death the end? From the pattern's point of view, yes. The dance stops. From the point of view of atoms, of energy, of the fundamental substance of reality, no. It's not even a pause. It's just a change of partner. I don't know what happens to consciousness when the brain stops. No one knows. Physics doesn't have a complete theory of consciousness. And anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. What physics can tell you and state with absolute certainty is that not a single atom in your body will be destroyed. Not a single bit of energy will disappear. Everything you are, in the physical sense, will continue in another way, in a different pattern, but it will continue. And there's one more thing. Every person who has ever lived, every person who has ever loved you, every person whose atoms have passed through you and yours through them, everyone is intertwined in the same immense fabric of matter and energy that makes up this universe. The atoms in your right hand may have been in the body of a farmer in ancient Egypt. The oxygen you just exhaled may reach someone's lungs 1,000 years from now. We are all connected, not by feeling, but by physics. By the simple, stubborn, and beautiful fact that atoms withstand time. So, the next time someone asks you what happens when you die, you can answer with what physics says. The candle goes out, yes, but every atom of it is still here. The flame is gone, but the heat it produced is still warming the surroundings, warming the air, dissipating throughout the world, joining the immense ocean of energy that has been flowing through this universe since the beginning of everything. Nothing is lost, absolutely nothing. The dance changes, the music keeps playing. Now I want to hear from you. Here is a question worth considering. If every atom in your body is replaced over a few years, and you are truly a pattern, not a thing, then what exactly makes you, you? Write your best answer. I would love to know what you think.